Well, good evening and welcome to the Arbor Hills Nature Preserve in Plano, Texas. Tonight's exercise is a field test of the Nitecore EDC27. A lot of buzz around this light, a lot of people asking me for reviews, trying to decide whether this should be their next EDC. So I want to thank Nitecore for sending me the light and making the review possible. Now this review is going to be just like all the others, very heavy on beam shots and actual field testing. I know you've been to the website, you've looked through the feature list, you probably read one or two reviews. You are full of features and technical detail, but you still have questions. Well, my guess is those questions probably center around three areas: ergonomics, UI, and field performance. So let's take on each of those three. Now, I have been carrying and using this light for over a week and a half now. I have had it clipped into a variety of pockets onto my ruck. The clip just works absolutely perfect. Definitely exceeded expectation. In addition to the OLED readout, which is very handy and in fact becoming somewhat of a distinctive feature for Nitecore lights, I also like these raised textured areas on the side. It makes it very easy to maintain a good grip, which is important to me in the sense that if I use this at all in a search and rescue setting, I have to use it year-round. In the dead of winter with gloves, and I have to use it in the heat of summer when it's 96, 97 degrees out in the dark and my hands are going to be sweaty. So this is very easy to just take a light hold and it's not going to come out of my hand. Also, on the subject of my hand, I really like this area for finger placement. So when you're pressing down into a pocket, you have somewhere to put your fingers without getting on or near the controls. It also enables a nice hold like this, and so I have a place to rest my thumb without resting them on top of the controls, and so I'm walking along and I just accidentally lose just a little bit of balance. Maybe I step on a rock and I move forward like that. There's not going to be any accidental discharge. I can also hold like this, and sometimes I'll do this real low to the ground when I'm tracking. So from a standpoint of just ergonomics and general build, the form factor, this slim form factor, has really grown on me. Overall, I'd have to say very, very high marks in the ergonomic area. All right, what about the UI? Doesn't make any difference what the feature set is. If the UI does not work for you, well, that's it, game over. So let's go over that. Okay, here is the quick or abbreviated introduction to the UI. There are 5 output levels available: ultra low, low, mid, high, turbo, very standard for a lot of Nitecores. You have a power button and a mode button. This is what you use for on-off cycle through the output levels. This is for the so-called tactical outputs, and I use that word somewhat tongue-in-cheek. I'll go into why I really don't believe that this is a tactical light, quote-unquote, later. So a quick half press will get you the battery indication. Quick half press and hold goes into ultra low. If you click, it will take you into whatever mode in the rotation you were on before, so it does have memory. And then it's a half press, You can see that when I rotated through that, I accidentally messed that up. There's a very fine line between half press and full press. So it's going to take some element of time to get used to that. If I were operating in gloves, it would take even more time to get used to. So I don't like it in the sense that it's not very fault tolerant, and it will take you some element of time to get used to. I'm not used to operating it with this finger and from this orientation, so you can see I had a little bit of issue, but that's how you cycle through the modes. Now, this switch here, if you are off and you half press, you go to turbo, and then full press to strobe. If the light is on, same thing. You can half press to turbo, so you have on to turbo, off to turbo, on to strobe, off to strobe. All right? Well, let's go see what these lighting levels actually look like and how all this works together in field use cases. Before we get to field testing, I do want to point out that we have two electronic lockouts available. There's a half lockout and a full lockout. The half lockout disables this control only. The full lockout disables both of them. So if you are worried about ADs, carrying it in a pocket, I did have one issue with that in my testing over the last week, where you are transporting the light inside a pack, for example. You may want to at least half or completely lock it out. I am at the bridge right now. It is in the low to mid 40s and dropping. My hands are pretty cold. I am not going to operate with gloves tonight, see if that has any effect on my ability to operate the UI. The output level rotation on the EDC27 is ultra low, low, mid, high. Turbo is available with that short half press on the mode button, but only for a handful of seconds. We are in ultra low right now. All right, that is low, mid, and high. And brief flash to turbo. Off. Just for comparative purposes, that is my headlamp in 1000 lumen flood, same area. Okay, I want to illustrate something with one press to turbo. So I'm just looking through this area right here. Maybe I saw a rabbit go in here or something. I'm just checking that out, and I hear something off to my right. Go half press to turbo, and as soon as I let go, I just want to point out that it immediately returns back to the mode that you were in. Full press to strobe, same thing. One of the biggest uses I have for free or auxiliary type of lights in search and rescue is for tracking at night. So here's a trail. I'm looking for a very distinctive print. Did somebody come in this direction? And so the light that I'm using needs to work with my headlamp. So I have my headlamp turned down to a very low level right now, 100 lumen flood, just enough to illuminate the general proximity in front of me. And so now what I'm going to do is bring the EDC27 in low mode, and I'm just going to scan across this area, and immediately you can see the contrast, and I'm picking up a nice trail of prints right here in front of me. So this is why I kind of like that very smooth, even illumination you get from this type of light. And it's just so incredibly light. It packs anywhere. It would be very easy to take along in a SAR activity and use it just for this type of exercise. And of course, remember I talked about this grip, and we've got that half press to turbo if I just need very brief downrange situational awareness. There's an impression in search and rescue that everybody that you find is injured and immobile. Well, sometimes people just get lost. You find them after some food, hydration, warm them up on a night like tonight, they are capable of moving. So I always like to do a path following example because that process really involves them following me back to safety. So I have a kind of a path in front of me, and my headlamp is on 400 lumen flood. So let me bring the EDC27 in here in medium mode and turn my headlamp off. At this lumen level, I kind of figured this would be the ideal path following beam, and it turns out that yeah, I think that's right on. High would be serious overkill. You actually get a little bit better downrange visibility than I would have expected, but just, you know, for following me and following a groomed path if you have to. And I mean, this is a big deal. A lot of people that I help at night only intended to be out during the day. Their biggest problem was they never planned for temperatures and conditions at night. And a lot of that is just having a useful, functional light, both for close proximity area illumination, in this case, something that has a lot of runtime that you could use to follow a groomed path back to safety. Oh, there goes the rabbit. I was hoping I'd run into some wildlife tonight. This is an open area test. I've shown this view in several of my other tests. There's a tree line in front of me, not the trees you see right there. There's another tree line behind that, and it goes off to the left and goes out to over a football field in distance before losing line of sight. And I'm continuously illuminating this area in high mode right now. So I'm doing a couple things. I want to shift my hand further down towards the head right now, and we'll just scan back and forth in high. This tree line here is much closer distance. We've got 60, 75, maybe 80 yards back into that that area right in front of me. And I mean, it is a cold night that may be contributing to it, but I'm feeling just no heat at all here, and sustained operation in high output level. You know, but for an EDC style light, this is very interesting. Very wide field of view, very smooth, even illumination. All right, I want to do a couple more tests in turbo next. Well, speaking of other reviews and other videos, you may have seen this test before. We have the lit observation area to my left, looking back into a very dark pocket of trees. I'm going to go ahead and do the half pressed turbo from off, and I'm just going to hold it. Okay, you notice we had a bit of a step down there. Okay, let me do that again and let you see what the OLED indicator looks like. Yeah, you can kind of see the countdown bar there, and then the step down. We are at the top of the observation tower now. Looking across the bridge, it's just over 25 yards out to the opposite edge. I have some very faint backlighting, and I'm in low mode right now in the EDC27. There's mid or medium and high. So I thought that'd make another interesting test. I guess this is a bit of a bonus segment. I have to search creek areas frequently. A lot of the tack lights, even in a lower level of illumination, are just too high candela. So without a good closer proximity flood, I would have to use my headlamp, and to get down over the edge here, I'd have to get too close and angle my headlamp down. What I can do now is I can hold the EDC27 way out, stay well away from the edge, and still get a good search of these creek areas. And I'm not overlighting anything, so if there's fine detail down there I might miss, I'll pick it up with this light, and I'm not burning my headlamp or risking getting too close to the edge. And I'm in high mode right now. I'm back to the parking lot, actually the picnic area. Let's say I lost something up here earlier. I've got a lot of other light to deal with, so there's some dark pockets. So let me bring the EDC27 here in medium. Let's look around. Look over here in high. And in high, it's doing a pretty good job of dealing with all of these outside light sources. Okay, back to the truck here in the parking lot, looking around in medium mode. So overall, I did about 8 minutes of off-camera testing. I found that horizontal hold works a bit better than vertical. With a vertical hold, there are occasions when you try to rapidly half-click and your thumb rotates around and taps that mode button. The other issues with the UI are in the power button. If you pressed too hard, but then realize it and let off and end up clicking, you end up turning the light off. Worse than that is pressing down too hard, accidentally holding it, maybe under a bit of stress, and then that goes to half lockout. So I could go on and on about that. I really think it comes down to, are you willing to invest the time to really master this UI? Are you going to be working with gloves? That's another issue. But if you're really on board with the UI, there is quite a bit of capability there at your fingertips. I do intend on taking this slide out. Oh, let's go up to turbo. Yeah, there we go. I do intend on taking this slide out to the LBJ grasslands and taking what I consider to be a proper night hike, get away from all these groomed trails. In fact, even get out into some territory where there are no trails, and stress test the medium and high modes. I want to turn my headlamp back on here. Actually, let me go into flood. That's a little bit better. See if I can get this to work. There's the battery. We still have plenty of battery to go, so I think that's going to wrap it up for the EDC27 tonight. As always, until the next review, thank you very much for your time, and thank you for watching the video.